We're due to finish this part of the evening at 9:30, so that gives us about 40 minutes or so. What I'll do is I'll maybe take 2 or 3 questions or contributions before we go to our panel for them to respond and take them in sort of groups of 2s or 3s. Please be aware that obviously there are a lot of people here. You know, the film itself is obviously raises a great many issues for people. So if you could keep your contributions as concise as possible, it means I can bring more people in and more people can have a say. So just to remind you, our 3 speakers this evening, we have Andy Worthington, author and filmmaker, Aamer Anwar, human rights lawyer, and Omar Deghayes, who's a detainee in Guantanamo Bay. So if you would like to ask a question, make a contribution, please do put your hand up. I'll try and bring everybody in some kind of order if I can. If you've got a question for a particular member of the panel, then please do let us know that at the beginning. Okay, now, would you like the microphone, or because we've got one, we can pass it along? I'll leave it up to yourselves. So please just give me a wave if you'd like to be first in. Otherwise, I can bring the panellists in first if you prefer. No? Okay. Anyone in particular want to kick us off? Anything you'd like to say?
Well, I suppose I'd just like to say, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for turning up. And I know that when we're involved in discussing issues like Guantanamo, it's very easy for people to feel quite overwhelmed by everything that they see and to wonder what they can do. And that's why we're particularly encouraging everybody to act on behalf of Shaka Aamer, the only man in that film who is still held in Guantanamo. I believe that you've all been handed out a letter to David Miliband. So I would very much hope that you can find a first-class stamp or maybe a second-class stamp, get that in the post, and let's see if we can swamp David Miliband with requests. Because Shaka Aamer was cleared for release in 2007. The British government requested his return in August 2007 at the same time that they asked for the return of Omar and several other British residents, but he's still not here. And the British government regularly, when asked, says that they're doing all that they can and that the Americans are just not really cooperating. And there are a number of reasons to suspect that may be David Miliband yet again being slightly economical with the truth. We suspect strongly, or in fact we know that there have been discussions that the Americans would like to send Shaka back to the country of his birth, Saudi Arabia, where he wouldn't be allowed to speak openly about everything that he knows. And hopefully from what you've seen in the film, you know that he was not only an extraordinarily eloquent man, but a man who stands up robustly against injustice and would have a lot to say. He knows an enormous amount about what happened at Guantanamo. So we had hoped in recent months that a court case that established that British agents were present while he was being tortured in Afghan custody before he was sent to Guantanamo. They were in the room when the Americans were abusing him. That might provide some kind of leverage on the British government to act as they had a year ago with Binyam Mohamed, when the torture scandal, the transatlantic torture scandal in Binyam Mohamed's case led to both the British and the American governments thinking it would be a good idea to release him. So, you know, the letter that is there is really just a suggestion. You know, I think that it would be great if you can add your own ideas to it, come up with your own requests to David Miliband to explain to you personally why they seem to be unable with their greatest ally to secure the release of this last man. And I would just mention as well that that letter doesn't just ask about Shaka Aamer. We're also asking the British government to request for Ahmed Belbacha, an Algerian who lived in Britain for 2 years before he took an ill-advised holiday in Pakistan and ended up in Guantanamo. We're asking for him to be brought to the UK because he was cleared for release in 2007 and he's terrified of returning to Algeria. And like dozens and dozens of prisoners in Guantanamo who can't be returned to their home countries, he needs another country to offer to take him. And clearly Britain is in a better place than anybody else to do that. And David Miliband frequently pops up saying that, telling other countries in Europe to help President Obama close Guantanamo because he says that Britain's done enough. Britain has done the bare minimum. Britain has brought back its own nationals and its own residents, and it hasn't offered new homes to people who don't have a connection to this country but who can't be returned to their home countries because they fear torture. And the list is growing of other countries who have done that. And I think that that shames Britain. Countries like Albania, Belgium, France, Hungary, Ireland, Spain, Slovakia, Switzerland, now Georgia in the last few days have all taken prisoners who are not from there, who are cleared for release but who can't be returned home. And Britain hasn't. And I think especially when you've seen some of the evidence of British complicity in torture, I mean, I hope that that's helped people to understand that when it came to the war on terror, I don't think that America had a better ally than Britain in breaking the law, in embracing torture and extraordinary rendition. I think we are in a position to demand of our government that what they should be doing, the least they can do to help atone for this, is to help President Obama close Guantanamo by bringing other cleared men to live in this country. So I very much hope you can send that letter to David Miliband. Thanks.
So I think if we give another two speakers a chance to make a contribution, and that'll give you all a chance to be a bit more brief, and then bring yourself in straight after.
I think when people watch this film, when I watched it last night, sometimes people think, well, what can we do? And I remember speaking in this room over a year ago when President Obama was elected, and one of the first great things that he said was, in the first week of office, in an attempt to distance himself from George Bush, was that he was going to close Guantanamo Bay. And I remember at the time being one of a handful of people saying, I'm quite cynical about it, and I thought maybe I am being cynical, but what we've seen in the course of the last year is that it's clear that with regards to the United States and Obama, it's business as usual for United States imperialism. Despite his promises, Guantanamo is still open, but as was said in that film, what we should realize is that Guantanamo is actually just the tip of the iceberg. The United States may well close down Guantanamo, but they're filling up Bagram, and they're filling up other prisons around the world, some of which have been mentioned in the film. But what I think is important to remember when you watch a film like that, many people in this room and meetings up and down this country have often thought, what's the point? What difference can we make? You're talking about United States, you know, when you consider, we're not just talking about Morocco, we're not just talking about Guantanamo, but actually 20 minutes away, planes were landing at Prestwick Airport, people were shackled in them, and they were being taken away on rendition, and the fact was that in this country we weren't able to do anything about it, or we didn't try and do anything about it. I think what we should remember is that it's this movement, it's meetings like this, and ordinary people up and down this country. Several years ago, I remember speaking in this room with the father of Muazzin Beg, and people at that time saying, what difference can we make? And then a few years later, Muazzin Beg came to Glasgow and came to Edinburgh and spoke at meetings. And now today we have Omar speaking here today. And the fact is that it's the movement that makes a difference. It's ordinary people that take the credit for actually forcing the United States, forcing the British governments to act. If detainees are released, and they will be released, and we have to fight to have them released, it will come about because of the campaigns and the pressures that is put on the authorities, not because of the legal system, not because of the judiciary, and not because of the politicians. And the message should be simple. That is the message of this film, that we shouldn't be afraid to campaign, and whether it be Guantanamo, whether it be racism, or whether it be the war, we can actually make a difference. And the latter point that I want to make about is the fact that we have an election coming up, and the members of the new Labour government knew exactly what was going on in Guantanamo, what was going on with regards to rendition, whether it be Gordon Brown, whether it be Tony Blair, whether it be Peter Hain, John Reid, Jack Straw, David Miliband, and the others. They all turned a convenient blind eye to CIA rendition and torture, but it was more than that. They colluded in the torture of people like Binyam and Omar and others. They knew exactly what was going on. And the 7 men, including Omar, who presently have a case against the government for their mistreatment, their extraordinary rendition, the torture facilitated by British security services. What we've actually had over the last several months is lawyers for the government, including MI6, MI5, the Foreign Office, the Attorney General, argue that because there's more than 250,000 documents and half of them are marked secret, there shouldn't be these shouldn't be released because it'll take more than 10 years. There's also numerous allegations that British soldiers murdered and abused and unlawfully killed Iraqis, and the government is refusing to hold a public inquiry into all these issues. We have to fight tooth and nail for a public inquiry so the truth comes out, so that those people are held accountable, more than just the foot soldiers, but actually the likes of Tony Blair, the likes of Gordon Brown, the likes of David Miliband. When you have the Director General of the MI5 insist last week that they do not carry out torture nor collude in torture, then why is it that the government has attempted to cover up the evidence of abuse in court cases? 42 documents